Because of the coronavirus, you've likely heard a lot of Christians talking about the end times and the tribulation period. Now, for some Christians, this might seem very encouraging to them, and you might be wondering, why is it encouraging? And then for other Christians, they may look at this as very discouraging. So why do some Christians look at it as encouraging and other Christians look at it as discouraging? Well, to clarify, I want to make sure everyone knows I'm not saying I know when the end time will be. The Bible makes it very clear we don't know that. Only God knows when the end will be. We just have to be prepared for when the Lord will come, because it says, I will come like a thief in the night. You're not going to know when I'm coming. Be prepared. So the point is, I do believe there is wisdom in living life as if Jesus could come back at any moment, because in that case we would want to witness to people immediately. We wouldn't want to say, oh, I'll do that later. We would want to give forgiveness as soon as possible. We wouldn't want to say, oh, I'll do that later. We would want to get our life settled as soon as possible rather than waiting till later. So I think there is wisdom in living life as though the end could be at any time. However, at the same time, I want to clarify, I have no idea when the end is coming. A lot of people look at the book of Revelation and say some of the things that are happen in the book of Revelation seem to be happening now. I can appreciate that, but at the same time, you can apply those same things to other times throughout history. Are we in the end times? I don't know. I don't think so. Is the end times coming? Of course it's coming. I just don't know how soon. So we've been waiting thousands of years, and it still hasn't come yet, but we still look to hope that Jesus will come back. So why do some people find this encouraging and some Christians find this discouraging? Well, it depends on what they believe about the rapture. So there are three different views about the rapture. But what is the rapture? Well, the rapture is when Jesus promised, hey, I'm going to heaven. I'm going to my Father to prepare a place for you guys, for my followers. And when I've prepared a place for you, I will come back and I will take you with me, and there will you be as well. So where I am, you will be with me. So we look at this idea that Jesus is coming back and that he's going to bring us with him. He's going to rapture up the church. And then we look in the book of Thessalonians when Paul is writing to these people who they were becoming a little discouraged because some people had died, and they thought some Christians had died, and they said, will they be raptured up too, or have they missed out? Because they were waiting for Jesus to come back, and we've still been waiting for thousands of years. And Paul clarifies saying, don't worry, they're not going to stay dead. They're going to be resurrected too. They'll be resurrected first, then we'll be raptured up, things like that. So the Bible seems to make it very clear, Jesus is coming, he will rapture us, but the question becomes, when will he rapture us? So for some, this is called Pretribulationists. They believe that Jesus is coming back before the tribulation period. The evidence for this is, first, they believe that the tribulation period is meant to be in part a punishment for the world and avenging of the saints of the Lord, those who've been martyred, things like that. The book of Revelation seems to imply that in some places. So if that's true, then why would the Christians have to suffer through that as well? So that's one of the evidence that pre-tribulationists have for believing that Jesus will resurrect them, will rapture them up before the tribulation period, because he doesn't want them to go through the wrath of God. So then you have the second evidence is the fact that in the book of Revelation, even though it was written to churches, for whatever reason, churches are mentioned throughout the book of Revelation, but it's not mentioned during the tribulation period. So if it was written to churches, why wouldn't John be telling the churches what the church should be doing during the tribulation period? But because the churches are never mentioned during the tribulation period, some have argued that this means that it's because they were raptured up before the tribulation period. So again, the church wasn't mentioned during the tribulation period in the book of Revelation, and that's why some believe that they won't be there during the tribulation period. They'll be raptured before. So then you have Midtribulationists. Similar to the Pretribulationists, they believe that God doesn't want to punish Christians for the sins of the world. The time of tribulation, especially the second half, is when God is going to pour out his wrath on the world for their sins and for their massacring of his people. So why would the Christians have to suffer through that as well? So the Midtribulationists believe that the rapture will happen in the middle of the tribulation, right before the second half in which God's wrath is going to be poured out. So the tribulation period is two different parts. The Bible describes it in two different parts. The first 3.5 years and the second 3.5 years. They believe it will happen before the last 3.5 years, which God will pour out his wrath on mankind. And then you have post-tribulationists. The post-tribulationists believe that since the rapture was never mentioned in the book of Revelation or during the tribulation period, they believe it will happen after the tribulation period, in which Jesus, it says he will come back, and they say that's when the church is raptured up. So for the post-tribulationists, this concept that the end is coming is very discouraging, right? Because they think we have to suffer through the tribulation period. For the pre-tribulationists, this is very encouraging because they believe that means Jesus is coming back very soon and he will rapture up the church, something that we've been waiting for thousands of years. And then in the mid-tribulationists, they would be kind of 50-50 on the discouraging, encouraging scale. Encouraging because Jesus is coming back soon, but a little discouraging because they'll have to suffer through the first 3.5 years. So that's why some Christians find it encouraging, other Christians find it discouraging. I personally am a pre-tribulationist. I believe the rapture will happen before the tribulation period. If you've ever seen the series Left Behind, that's the pre-tribulationist theory. It's this idea that the church will be raptured before the tribulation period.